There's a trend going around on social media right now called Where My Lore Started, and this is where mine did. The whole Where My Lore Started trend is about things that you used to like watch or read, or just influences as a child that you used to love that have stuck with you until like adulthood basically. And one of my favorite booktubers, Carrie Can Read, posted this video literally yesterday where she made an entire book tag about this, and I was like, that's genius. I'm gonna hop on that immediately. So I wanted to do a quick little book tag. I have all the prompts here that she had written on my computer, and basically just talk about all the books that I used to read when I was younger. I mean, I'm 18 right now, about to turn 19, so I'm not like a completely adult, but it's like my tastes have definitely differed from when I was a kid, and I still have so many of the books that I used to love. So yeah, let's get into it. I'm super excited. The first question is, what's the first book you remember reading by yourself? Now for me, I've actually been reading since I was 2, so I've read a lot of books over my entire lifetime. I've always been a huge reader, but I'm not gonna count like picture books or like little baby books, you know, that doesn't really count. What I wanted to put on here was number 1, I have this book that I don't know where I got it. I literally think it's an ARC copy because it says publication month is April 2009, but I definitely didn't read this when I was 3, so I don't know why I have this book. And it's also so old that the cover is gone, okay? The cover is supposed to be this like lavender color. I'll put a picture here on the screen if I can find it. The book is called Tum Tum and Nutmeg, and I literally read this book into the ground so much that I now don't have a cover on it. The spine is broken. It's like so bent and messed up, but like books like this I have such a soft spot for in my heart because you can know that they're loved. This is basically a story about 2 mice, and they're actually little photos inside of the book. They're so adorable. I don't know what age I read this, but I remember reading this like over and over and over and like bringing it on road trips and stuff, and this was like my thing. I don't know why, but it was. Another book I remember reading that my mother actually recommended to me, because my mother was actually a 6th grade English teacher, so she used to recommend obviously a lot of books to her students when she was a teacher, and one of those books is Stargirl. I think the author's name is Jeremy something. This book is, I think, has been made into a movie or a TV show. It's a pretty popular one. It's about a girl who goes to school and she's just like different than all the other kids, and it's about someone like finding their own voice and making friends and just growing up and being comfortable in their own body. So I remember reading this with her, like she wanted me to read this with her, but then I think I like went and read it on my own as well, and I really enjoyed this one too. So I don't know if there are any other books that I may have forgotten that are like my first books to have read by myself that aren't like children's books. Maybe I can ask my parents what they remember and I'll put them on the screen here. But yeah, besides that, those are my first thoughts. The next question is, what character did you most identify with in grade school? And for me, 100% that has to be Josefina from American Girl Dolls. Now, this is actually a set of books. I have the entire series in a box set because I love this series so much. American Girl was one of my favorite books ever. I have like a huge collection in my game room, like literally right now at my childhood home. I have all the Josefina books, I have all the Rebecca books, the Samantha books, the Caroline books, the Felicity books. I have some Kaya books, some others, like multiple different girls. And basically, if you don't know, or if you're not like living in America, because like this is obviously a very American thing, they made a lot of children's books in like sets of 6. They're like these like very floppy, really skinny paperbacks that they made about fictional people but across different parts of America at different times. So Josefina is supposedly this age in 1824. There's like Felicity, who lived in like 1700s in the colonies. Kaya, I think, is a Native American, things like that. So this was my thing. I loved American Girl. I read all the books, but specifically Josefina was my favorite, and I relate to her, or I identified with her most in grade school because I actually dressed up as her, I think, for one of our dress up days. I don't remember if it was like, I think it was like character day parade is what it was called. It's like you dress up as a character of a book and then you like have a little parade around the school. I think we did one every year in elementary school. I remember dressing up as Rebecca, I want to say, a different year with my friend, but I remember my mother specifically for this costume, I like looked perfect. I had the clip in my hair. My mother made me this little pouch that she's wearing, and like I put it around like a red skirt. I looked just like her, and I wanted to be her so bad. So like this was my number 1. So the next question is pretty broad. It is, what was your grade school comfort book? And honestly, the list goes on and on, so I have quite a couple options here. First, of course, is American Girl Doll, and a couple of the other ones I already mentioned. I also have Emily Winsnap on here. This is the story of a human who turns into a mermaid, and obviously as like a girl in middle school, that was like my number 1 goal in life, was to turn into a mermaid. So So this book, and actually all 6 books in the series I read, I was a huge series girl in the day. Like right now, I can't finish duologies without like waiting 8 months in between because I'm like reading so many other random things. But when I was younger, I would start a series and I would finish the series and then I'd move on to something else. Like I'd read every book, no matter how many they were. So Emily Winsnap was huge for me. This is another one, Wings of Fire. If you can't tell, I was definitely a fantasy girl because Wings of Fire is about dragons. Not like people riding dragons, but like the dragons themselves are the main characters. Like think Warriors, if you know that cat series, but like not as weird. I love having these like years later. I'm not gonna read these again, but like they're in my bookshelf in my childhood bedroom and it's like nice to hold these up. 11 Birthdays. This is in a series that I really, really loved. I remember the first one was not my favorite. This is about a girl whose birthday, and she shares her birthday, I think, with her best friend. And what is his name? Is it Leo? It is Leo. Something goes wrong on that birthday, so it's like Groundhog Day because it keeps happening over and over and they can't break the spell. So these are like magical realism books, but this entire series was also one of my faves. The Whatever After series, this is like a girl and her younger brother who go into fairy tales. So the first book was Snow White, as you can see, because she kind of looks like Snow White, but they go into all these different like Disney princess stories and like kind of, I don't know, do they like change the past? Do they? Oh, they do. They change it to make it a happy ending. They're really short books, but I have at least 8 of them over in the other room. Like I ate these up so much. Every Stole a Star. This is about 3 characters, Allie, Bree, and Jack. Okay, so those are their names, and they all, I think, are on this like camping trip, and they are really interested in stars, and so I think the 3 of them like become really good friends over this like span of this book. One of the thicker books, I have to say, on this list. I think this one was one that I read when I was a little bit older. I really couldn't pinpoint ages. I remember specifically in like 5th and 6th grade, I was reading like Percy Jackson. I'll get to that. I'll get there, don't you worry. But I couldn't tell you what age I was reading like books like this. I remember loving them, but I don't know. But another thing is I'm actually like young for my age. So when I was in 6th grade, I was 10, where most people were 11 and 12. So like the ages of things are a little off, if that makes sense. But anyway, I think I'd probably be around like 9-ish when I read this. So 5th grade. A couple more, the Penderwick series. This one I loved, and honestly, I think it gave me nostalgia at the time and gives me nostalgia now too. It's about 4 siblings and their friend named Jeffrey and how they spend their summer together. I related to Rosalind a lot in this. She's the oldest, but my favorite character was Sky. She's the second oldest, and she's the most active and like the most exciting character, I think. So I like these a lot. And then I need to like wrap it up. So just one more. This is one that I actually introduced to my sister. I mean, I introduced all these to my sister, but this one has been her favorite, and that is Keeper of Lost Cities. This series is about a girl named Sophie, ironically, because that's my name too, but she is a human and then she finds herself in the elf world with like a bunch of elves. Spans multiple books. In fact, I think she's still writing these, not even kidding. This is a little bit older, I think, than some of these other books. I probably read this when I was around 10, 11, maybe 12. 12 seems like I'm pushing it because when I was 13, I read Akotar. So, you know, there had to be something in that gap. But yeah, this was a really cool series and my sister likes it more than I do. So I've actually like given her these books because she is obsessed with these. All right, so the next question is, how much has your taste changed since childhood? I would say in general, not much. From the books on this list, you can already tell that I'm really into mostly like fantastical things, like magic, fantasy characters, things like that. I do like a bit of romance and I do like historical, especially with the American Girls. So that's basically like how my tastes are now. I would say I think I do lean more heavily into contemporary romance. Most of these have magical elements to them, but also it's a kid's book, so they of course have magical elements to them. But I still love my fantasy. I still love my contemporaries. I still like to read historical, although I don't read as much historical as I used to, but I really enjoy it when I do pick up a historical book. I would say that I branch out a little bit more now. I've been getting more into dark romance, getting more into, I tried a thriller recently. I've been doing a little bit more sci-fi, a little bit dystopian, but like in general, the genres are the same. It's just that I'm reading like adult books now, obviously, rather than like children's books. Also, let's keep in mind that I'm only 18 turning 19, so I'm only like 8 years away from the age group where I was reading all of these, if that makes sense. So it's like, I'm sure as I grow older, my taste will continue to change more in the future, but I wanted to do this prompt now, so sue me. What book have you wanted to return to lately? This one I think is a pretty obvious choice because number 1, the newest book in the series literally came out 2 days ago, and number 2, the political situation of our country right now makes me think that this book needs to be read, and that is The Hunger Games. I read this book, I don't remember when was the first time. I want to say I was like maybe 11, so I was in 7th grade maybe when I read this for the first time. That can't be right. I don't know. I honestly don't know, but I adored this series. It's obviously so good. Like, I don't have to tell you how good The Hunger Games is. It's going to be a modern classic. Like, this is incredible. It's awesome to read as a kid because you're watching a love triangle, you're watching a death match, you're watching like drama and dystopia and stuff like that. But then as you grow up, you realize the amount of like political commentary that is also written in these pages is not just fiction. It's incredibly realistic, and so that's why I've been wanting to reread these books recently, because obviously it relates to that. And there is, of course, the new prequel that just came out with Haymitch, and the first prequel that came out a couple years ago. So I want to get the series again. This is my sister's copy, but I want to get like the series for me and maybe the special editions, because they're so beautiful. They're so beautiful. And reread this one. So that's my choice for that question. Your favorite or formative YA series? So when I think YA, I think like a little older than like some of these books. These are like middle grade books, most of them. YA, I think like 13 to 18 is the age group you're writing for. And honestly, I was reading those books from the years of like 11, 12 to like 14, 15. And then I kind of quit YA a couple years ago. I still read a couple YA books, but not many. And like I said, I read Ikotar when I was 13. So as far as like my formative YA books, I have two series that I actually brought with me to my college dorm. They mean that much to me. And that's why I don't have them here with me, because I'm at my childhood home. But the first series I can think of is the Shiver series by Maggie Stiefvater. I've talked about this series so much in my current book channel that it's so clear why it's formed me, because it was like literally one of my favorite series ever as a child. This is a book about Sam and Grace. Grace is a human and Sam was a human turned wolf. He's a werewolf, and there are wolves outside Grace's house, and she like notices one and has always noticed one. So she's always had the connection with the wolves, and then one day she wakes up and there's a human on her porch and he has the same eyes as her wolf did. So that series absolutely formed me. And then the other one I can think of immediately, because again, I adore this series and I wish I could hold it up because it's like mementos being able to have all of them, and that is both of the Percy Jackson series, the first one and the Heroes of Olympus series. So both of these series are 5 books long. The first one follows Percy mostly and his friends Grover and Abathalia as they're like at Camp Half-Blood, which basically means that they're all demigods. They all have one human parent and one god parent based off of Greek mythology. And then the second series opens the cast of characters to like way more people, because it turns out there's a second camp across the United States and the story expands exponentially from there. I think that the second series is personally so much better than the first, but the first was like the start and it's necessary to read, and there's still so much good in those books. I literally just reread book 3 in series 1 in January just for fun. So like this series has absolutely formed me. Oh, and also Harry Potter, I read them, but Percy Jackson was always my thing. I was never a Hogwarts fan over a Percy Jackson fan. This was my number one. So if you haven't read these, I don't care what age you are. I don't care. Pick them up, okay? Pick them up. A book you had to read in school but you actually loved. I have 2 options for this. Number 1, I think it was in 7th grade or going into 7th grade, we had to read Refugee. It's about 3 different people escaping their country, like being refugees, escaping their countries at different times. So Yosef is escaping Berlin, Germany in 1938. Isabel is escaping Havana, Cuba in 1994. And Muhammad is escaping Aleppo, Syria in 2015. So all stories about younger children who are like escaping their home countries. Very serious topics, but told in a very digestible way for younger audiences. So this is not only very informational and historical in some ways, but also like really relevant and easy to digest. One of those books that I really enjoyed, even though it was like forced down my throat in the school system. And then the other book I actually read more recently, I read this one in high school, but I'm gonna count it because I really do still stand by it. And I remember my friends reading it in earlier years, so it kind of counts. And that is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This is a book about a girl who's in Germany when the Holocaust happens, and I think they're housing a Jew in their house. I don't think they're Jews, but they're housing one and they're hiding one. And so it's a story about her family making friends with this literal stranger that they have in their house, and also of course dealing with World War II and the Nazis and all of that stuff. And there's a lot of tragedy in this book, but I think it's a really good story about World War II. I've read quite a lot of fictional stories and a couple of non-fictions about the war and the Holocaust, and this one Stands Out to Me was one of my favorites. What is your weirdest favorite book? Okay, I have a couple options for this. Number 1, I have this book called Island of the Blue Dolphins. I remember I was terrified by this book. It's about a girl alone on an island who is like basically left. I think her like Native American tribe like left her, and so she's just like waiting for them to return. She makes friends with the dolphins. She has this wolf that follows her around. She's like scrounging for food. Basically it's just her in solitude, right? And this book scared me to read. I mean, maybe it's like my fear of being alone coming out, I don't know, but I think just in general, like as a kid, I was like, this is like, she's being abandoned, she has to live by herself, there are wolves at night, like all that stuff was scaring me. And yet I read this like 5 times. So I don't know what my penchant was for like terrifying myself. Like, okay, masochist, but I liked it, so there you go. I'm not saying this is like a weird or a bad book. I'm just saying it was weird that I still read this over and over despite having visceral fear while reading this. Another one that I'm thinking of, oh, classics. So I actually read Little Women, which I reread last winter, and Anne of Green Gables when I was very young for the first time. My mother, again, English teacher, wanted me to read the classics, and so I read Little Women multiple times. In fact, my copy of Little Women is like very worn, and I have also a special edition copy of Anne of Green Gables, both at my dorm, unfortunately, which is why I don't have them here, but I remember really, really liking both of those, and also watching movie adaptations for both of those when I was younger. I want to say like junior high, so 11, 12 years old, maybe even, I wouldn't say younger than that, because who's reading a classic at younger than that? But also like who's reading a classic at the age of 11? I don't know. I wouldn't say that they're incredibly hard books to digest, but I do think that because they are written in older time periods, like I think Little Women was literally written in the 1800s. Let me fact check myself. When was Little? 1868. There we go. So because the book was literally written about 150 years before I was even born, I feel like the language and just the words that they use are unfamiliar, which is why I think reading it at a young age was like weird. But I really enjoyed this one, and I also enjoyed Anne of Green Gables. If your 10-year-old self could live in a fictional world, which would it be? And I 100% immediately when I thought of this question decided to pick Land of Stories. I think I read this book a little later than when it was popular. I think my friends were reading it in like 5th and 6th grade, but I read it in like 7th and 8th grade. But I remember really loving this series. It's about, I think, a brother and sister who fall into a land of stories, basically. So it's like you have all the different fairy tales, like Red Riding Hood and Princess Cinderella and Tangled and what else? You know, just like fairy tales, like Humpty Dumpty, things like that. Kind of similar, honestly, to this, but just like in a different font and also longer and written for some of the older audiences. I remember I loved this series, and it's also one of those books that would be so fun to jump into because I'm jumping into a book where the characters are also jumping into a book, but I specifically want to live in the fictional world with all the different princesses and all the different like magics and stuff because it was so cool reading about. I loved how every princess had their own castle, but like in different styles and different ways. I loved reading about specifically, I remember there was one scene in book 1 where I think it's Goldilocks saves Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk and they run away on a horse together and eventually fall in love. That scene, like it was like 2 chapters worth of content that kept me going for like a good solid 3 months. I'm not even kidding. Like I specifically loved that one part of the book, and the second book was my favorite. It was so good. The 4th book I loved. Like this series was amazing, and I really love to be in this fictional world because it's like you're in a fantasy book, you know, with all like the fictional like princesses and stuff like that, but it's not like a fantasy world like this where you're fighting to the death, or a fantasy world like other fantasies, you know, where it's like you're sword fighting or you're escaping evil. Like this one I feel like would be much easier to stay alive and survive in, but also enjoy the magical properties of a fantasy world. So, and that's my choice for that. The last question is there a newly released book you wish you had when you were younger? And I immediately thought of the book Icarus, which I just recently read last month. This is a book about an art thief who is in high school and the story of him doing his art thievery and dealing with his rough relationship with his father, but it's also about him learning to love people because of the way that his father treats him. He is not good with physical touch. He doesn't get connected to people, but people at school, like his friends, almost like force it onto him and like force him to accept their love, not in like a claustrophobic way, but in a like we're always here for you and you have the ability to lean on people and just depend on people way. And they're just so sweet to him. And there's also this guy Helios who he meets, and there's like the art thievery aspect of it as well, but there's just so much more to that as far as the character growth and like seeing a closed off teenager just be open to love and acceptance, whether it's romantic or platonic or familial, things like that. It was just such a beautiful book to read, and also the writing style was gorgeous. So this is a YA book that I recently read that I honestly have not heard a lot of talk about, but I really will talk about it forever because I really enjoyed it, and I think that I would have really appreciated it if I read it at a younger age as well, especially I think in like early high school, maybe when I was like 13, because I was a freshman at 13, so I think I would have really enjoyed this then. So that was my little book tag. If you want to answer the questions, I'll leave them down in the description box below, but also keep in mind that I didn't create this tag, Carrie Can Read did, and she also has a couple more questions on her video that I just decided to cut out. So with that, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe as always, and if you want to watch my most recent video, I'll have it here on the screen. Goodbye!